as much power, as much horsepower, they can understand it, they can add things to it, it can be just as good, but a newcomer who knows nothing about computers can walk up and figure it out easier than brand B. And he taught us you should always make these computers so easy that a young kid, a young 10-year-old, can walk up and use it easily. And that and a mother who's never been near a computer can watch you walk up and do useful things with it. But it takes thinking, it takes work on your part. Jeff Raskin was to eventually take Steve Jobs and myself and others into Xerox Palo Alto Research Center, Park Center, where they actually had machines they were building that had windows that popped up on a TV screen, and menus, and this thing called a mouse with buttons that could make selections. And it was so unbelievable to watch this thing. And when you saw several windows open on a TV screen, what hit me was, oh my God, it's like you have 3 computers in one. It's so unbelievably powerful. Once you have that, you'll never go back. And this was sort of the seeds of the next direction for Apple. That led to hiring a bunch of people who were very smart humanists, a lot of educators and people who thought about how should technology work with the human being. And Larry Tesler joined us from Palo Alto Research Center and set up a lot of training where we would put people in a room, a concealed room with 2 one-way mirrors so we could watch them. They didn't know anyone was watching them, and we'd say, we're going to put you in here with a piece of equipment, find out what you can do with it. We wouldn't give them any training at all. And they'd sit down, and after a while they might discover this little thing called a mouse that when they moved it, something moved on the screen, a cursor. And they might discover that there's a bunch of little icons for painting. And when they make selections, they discover how to use things, and menus that had different words. And we played around, and we came up with the formulas for what works best with a person who knows nothing about a computer. How many menus? What size words? What should the words be? What should the order be? What should the icons look like? What works the best for the neophyte, the novitiate that knows nothing? And that was basically how we designed this Lisa computer. Now the Lisa computer used 1 megabyte of RAM, and it's pretty hard to imagine using less than that for any computer with a mouse. And graphics. It was black and white as a computer, that saved RAM, and 1 megabyte of RAM cost $5,000 in that year. So the Lisa computer cost $10,000, and it didn't make a big dent. We didn't sell very many of them at that price. Steve Jobs has a personality style where he thinks things out so fully in his head, and he's so smart, he's usually right on and better thinking than anyone else in the company. But he'll go around into meetings and instantly tell people to scrap their ideas, they're worthless, because he's thought it out so far with his own ideas. So he became very unpopular in the Lisa group, and they wouldn't let him in the building. So he went over to Jeff Raskin's Macintosh project. Now this project had a lot of the outer levels of society working for it. I was working for it, you know. I never had a college degree, and Burl Smith was the designer. He'd never even gone to college, and he was the hardware designer. And Andy Hertzfeld for software. It had just all these people that kind of didn't go along with doing things in structured way. They didn't like working for a regular 9-to-5 job. And they were all on this Macintosh program. And Steve Jobs ran over. They were all my best friends in the company just because of the types of people they were. Steve Jobs came over and took over the Macintosh project because Jeff had some weird ideas. And Steve, I think, had more down-to-earth ideas. And they always argued it over the years to come. But Steve pressured those people so hard to work to get every little thing done and didn't seem to appreciate how hard they had worked to get the little features that became the first Macintosh that almost all of them refused to ever work with him again in their life. So it's, you know, it's an example of the artisan. You know, the artist, it's difficult to work with other people. You almost have to be in total control. I had an easy time as an artist with the Apple II because of the fact I conceived it, I designed it on paper, I drafted it, I built it, I tested it, I wrote all the software. Matter of fact, I couldn't afford an assembler program to type my programs. The entire programming of the Apple II, I couldn't type it into a computer to get it checked out. I had to write the program on a piece of paper and then write ones and zeros that it equaled on the other side. I figured out what they equaled, and then I typed the ones and zeros into my computer. Could never afford. So the entire Apple II was done by hand, by one person, by one mind. That was how I sheltered myself from the other people. Steve Jobs, you know, to be the artisan at that higher level and get the real quality and excellence out of them, had to push them pretty hard. In the early days of the Macintosh, pretty much we understood, Steve Jobs understood the college market well, and we didn't have any business software. We didn't have a spreadsheet program yet, although Excel was to be done first on the Macintosh by major concessions like giving away the GUI to Microsoft. But so we had this little graphics machine that a college student could do what they want to do. They just want to sit down and write a paper. They don't want to learn all these computer terms. They don't want to memorize a bunch of weird statements that only computer people would know. They just want to write a paper. It was the computer for the rest of us. It was really understanding that, let humans do things the way they're used to as humans. Something that Apple's really noted for. And the businessmen all favored the IBM PC because it had business software. It had a program called 123. They could do all their spreadsheet and their graphics and their word processing and intermix them. So the business people called the Macintosh a toy. And that hurt us. We really knew that it had as much of a processor inside, it just had to be developed. So overall time, I'm going to kind of conclude by my this part of the program right now. Over time, Apple's products have had a lot of consistency. Pretty much we go for the state of the art. We try to push into floppy disk first. We were the first computers to have USB built in. One of the first to have the FireWire built in. We invented the FireWire. A lot of these steps, Apple becomes the first at to build the cameras into the computers. And then very often we get followed on. We were the first to successfully market to the masses Wi-Fi. The first was the Apple Airport. There were no other Wi-Fi for the masses before that, even though it had been around other levels. All of our products are very future-driven, looking at what should we drop that's going to be dropped by computers in the future, and what should we include. This is the way all computers are going, the sort of ports. All of our products are just so attractive that it's so compulsive. I have to have it, that drooling sensation. And it's always a good human fit. Steve would often talk about a nice feel of a rock in a creek to the hand, how it feels to the hand. And that's how our mouse should be shaped. And it's like that sort of thinking about, is the human more important or is the technology more important? In one case, when the human's more important, you put a lot of effort in to bend the technology to work the human way. When the technology's more important, you put all the technology you can think of and all the gadgets in, but you force the human to modify their behavior to learn how the technology works. And I think we've taken big steps backwards, but in the early Macintosh days, those were the dreams and they were great. The iPod thought about a music device by not being a music device. And that was part of its big success. People don't want a music device. They don't want a device where they have to remember file names and procedures and orders to do things. All they want is music to the ear. And the iPod, you simply plugged it into your computer, which had an easy buy a song method, a good user interface, and the music was on your iPod. It was in your ear. You didn't have to take any computer steps. So it was not really a music device at all. It was just part of the formula you really wanted. And all of our products have to be attractive like art. Now, I'm concluded with my speech, but we're going to have a lot of question and answers, and they can cover a lot of current topics, anything you're interested in. I will get a lot more interesting subjects from here on. So thank you very much for that.